The champagne flute felt like a weapon in my hand as I stood before Portland's elite, their expectant faces glowing in the amber light of the Old Foundry's historic brick walls. Clare looked radiant beside me, her emerald dress catching the waterfront's reflection through those massive industrial windows. She had no idea what was coming. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice carrying across the lavish engagement party with practiced ease. "Before we celebrate, Clare has something important to discuss. Something about protecting our assets." Clare's smile faltered. The crowd leaned forward, sensing drama like sharks smelling blood. "A prenup," she announced, her voice slightly strained. "Eric and I believe in being practical about—" "Actually," I interrupted, pulling out a leather portfolio from my jacket. "I took the liberty of having one drawn up already. On my terms, of course." The color drained from Clare's face as I handed her the documents. Her manicured fingers trembled as she scanned the pages. The prenup wasn't just protective, it was ironclad, favoring me completely. Every clause she'd planned to trap me with was reversed. This isn't what we discussed," she whispered. "No, sweetheart. This is what happens when you underestimate a blue-collar boy who learned to read the fine print." I raised my glass to the stunned crowd. "To Clare. May she always get exactly what she deserves." The silence was deafening. Then the whispers started, rippling through Portland's social elite like wildfire. Clare's face burned crimson as she realized her public humiliation was just beginning. Turns out betrayal is best served with a passed hors d'oeuvre and a side of shock. My revenge started before the vows. The next morning, Clare was desperate to backtrack, but I was already 3 steps ahead. 6 months into our marriage, domestic bliss felt more like domestic warfare. "I'm Eric Nash, 35, and I built my IT consulting business from nothing after spending my 20s fixing computers in a strip mall. Now I debug corporate networks and design security systems for half of Portland's businesses. Clare Evans, now Nash, is a marketing executive at Pinnacle Communications, all ambition and designer suits. Our downtown condo screamed success, floor-to-ceiling windows, granite countertops, and a mortgage that would make most people weep. But success has a funny way of revealing who people really are." "Working late again?" I asked one Tuesday evening, watching Clare reapply lipstick in our hallway mirror. "Julian needs the Morrison account presentation perfect for tomorrow." She didn't meet my eyes. "You know how demanding he is." Julian Reed, her boss. 38, married, and owner of a vintage Mustang that seemed to spend an awful lot of time in our building's garage. Funny how Clare never mentioned when he was working late, too. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister Liz. "Dinner Sunday? Haven't seen you in weeks." "Claire, Liz wants us over for—" "Can't. Julian's having a strategy retreat this weekend." She grabbed her purse, avoiding eye contact. "Some of us have to actually work for our success, Eric." The dig landed exactly where she intended. My business was doing well, but I'd never be Portland elite. I wore jeans to client meetings and drove a 3-year-old Honda. Claire's world was champagne brunches and networking galas. After she left, I sat in our living room, staring at her laptop she'd forgotten on the coffee table. The screen was locked, password protected. 6 months ago, we'd shared everything. Now she guarded her phone like state secrets. I'm good with technology. Really good. It comes with the territory when you've spent 15 years making broken systems work again. So when I noticed Claire's browser history was being wiped daily, and her email app never showed more than 3 messages, I started paying attention to other details, like the silk scarf I found in her gym bag, burgundy with gold trim, expensive. Claire only wore silver jewelry, or the hotel keycard from the Eastland Park that fell out of her coat pocket. We'd never stayed there together. My friend Danny from the old neighborhood stopped by Thursday night with beer and war stories from his construction job. "Saw your wife's boss the other day," he mentioned casually. "That Mustang of his was parked outside Bellinata during lunch. Weird, since his wife was having her book club meeting there. Small world, right?" "Yeah," I said, taking a long pull from my beer. Small world. But Julian's wife Miranda was in Boston that week for her mother's surgery. I knew because Claire had mentioned it, something about Julian being stressed about his wife being away. That weekend, while Claire was at her strategy retreat, I installed new security cameras in our condo. Professional grade, motion activated, with cloud backup. Just protecting our assets, like any responsible husband would do. Sunday dinner at Liz's was a welcome break from the tension. My sister had always been protective, probably because she helped raise me after our parents died in a car accident when I was 16. "You look tired," she said, setting down a plate of her famous lasagna. "Work's been crazy." "How's Claire adjusting to married life?" I pushed food around my plate. "She's busy. Lots of late nights at the office." Liz's expression sharpened. She'd never been impressed by Claire's social climbing, but she'd kept her opinions mostly to herself. Mostly. "Eric, you know you can talk to me about anything, right?" "I know." I met her eyes. "And when there's something to talk about, I will." Monday morning brought clarity in the worst possible way. I was reviewing the weekend's security footage when I saw Claire entering our condo Saturday afternoon, during her supposed retreat. She wasn't alone. Julian Reed followed her through our front door, his hands already reaching for her as she turned to face him. They kissed in my hallway, desperate and hungry, before disappearing toward our bedroom. I watched my wife betray our marriage in high definition, with timestamps and multiple camera angles. The footage was crystal clear, legally obtained on my own property, and absolutely devastating. But I didn't confront her immediately. Instead, I did what I do best. I gathered information and planned my strategy. Because if Claire thought she could play games with a man who makes his living outsmarting systems, she was about to learn exactly how wrong she was. Pinnacle Communications' Summer Gala was Portland's social event of the season. The venue was the Eastland Park's rooftop, the same hotel where Claire had been conducting her extracurricular activities. The irony wasn't lost on me. I wore my best suit and played the dutiful husband, shaking hands with Portland's business elite while internally cataloging every detail. Claire looked stunning in a black cocktail dress, playing her role as the ambitious young executive. Julian worked the room in his expensive suit, every inch the successful marketing firm owner. "Eric," boomed Mr. Huntley, Pinnacle's CEO, approaching with a martini in hand. "How's the tech business treating you?" "Can't complain. Just finished upgrading the security system for Morrison Industries, actually. Amazing what you can see when you install the right cameras in the right places." Julian, who'd been approaching our conversation, stopped mid-step. Claire's laugh sounded forced. "Technology is so invasive these days," she said quickly. "No privacy anywhere." "Privacy's overrated," I replied, meeting her eyes. "Truth has a way of coming to light eventually." The evening's real entertainment began when I excused myself to use the restroom. I'd studied the hotel's layout during my reconnaissance visits, old habits from my security installation work. The service corridors provided excellent vantage points for observing the main event spaces. Through a service door's window, I watched Claire and Julian meet in a secluded hallway near the kitchen. Their body language was intimate, urgent. Julian's hand cupped her face as she spoke rapidly, gesturing toward the main party. I activated the recording app on my phone and crept closer. "Can't keep doing this," Claire was saying. "Eric's been asking questions." "He's a computer geek, not a detective," Julian replied, pulling her closer. "Besides, after Montreal, we'll have everything we need to get him out of the picture permanently." Montreal, that was news to me. "The account transfers have to look legitimate," Claire continued. "If the audit trail leads back to us, it won't. We'll make sure it points straight to your husband's consulting contracts. Corporate espionage, embezzlement, he'll be lucky to avoid prison." They were planning to frame me. My own wife and her lover were plotting to destroy my business and my freedom to cover their affair and their theft. I'd heard enough. 20 minutes later, I was back at the party, chatting with other guests as if nothing had happened. But Julian's vintage Mustang in the parking garage was about to have a very bad night. I'd brought a small toolkit, old habits from my repair shop days. The paint job was artistic. "Cheater" in bold red letters across both doors. The tires were slashed with surgical precision, and I may have accidentally spilled a large coffee across his leather interior after jimmying the lock. When Julian discovered his car an hour later, his roar of rage could be heard 3 floors up. I was standing next to Claire at the bar when the commotion started. "What's all that noise?" she asked, looking genuinely puzzled. "Sounds like someone's having car trouble," I said, sipping my whiskey. "Terrible thing, vandalism. Really makes you wonder who might have enemies in this crowd." Julian stormed back into the party, his face flushed with anger and humiliation. Several guests had already gone down to see the spectacle, and phones were out, taking pictures. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced, raising my glass as Julian approached our group, "let's have a toast to Claire and her boss, Julian. May your brainstorming sessions always be as productive as they've been lately." The double meaning hit its targets perfectly. Claire went pale, Julian's jaw tightened, and several guests exchanged knowing looks. In Portland's social circles, reputation was everything, and I'd just planted seeds of doubt that would grow into full-blown scandal. "Eric," Julian said through gritted teeth, "might I have a word with you privately?" "Of course. Always happy to chat with my wife's supervisor." We walked toward the parking garage, Julian's anger barely contained. The moment we were alone, he grabbed my shoulder and spun me around. "You think you're clever?" he snarled, shoving me against a concrete pillar. "You think you can embarrass me in front of my clients?" I think," I said calmly, That you're making a mistake putting your hands on me? Your wife deserves better than some blue-collar nobody who got lucky with computers. My wife, I replied, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, deserves exactly what she's going to get. And Julian, you're outmatched. This is just the beginning. Something in my tone made him step back. Good. He should be worried, because my security cameras had captured everything, their affair, their embezzlement plot, their plan to frame me, and I was just getting started. The next morning, I began making calls. Private investigators, forensic accountants, and a lawyer who specialized in corporate fraud. If Clare and Julian wanted to play games with my life, they were about to learn that I didn't just fix broken systems, I could break perfectly good ones too. Montreal in August was beautiful, but I wasn't there for sightseeing. I was there to watch my wife and her lover dig their own graves. Sophie Dubois was the private investigator I'd hired, sharp, bilingual, and completely invisible when she needed to be. She'd been tracking Clare and Julian since they arrived at the Fairmont Queen Elizabeth for their business retreat. They're not being careful, Sophie reported over coffee in the hotel lobby. Amateur hour. Your wife keeps taking notes on hotel stationery, and the boyfriend pays for everything with his corporate card. Through Sophie's surveillance, I learned the scope of their plan. They weren't just having an affair, they were systematically looting Pinnacle Communications client accounts and preparing to pin it all on me. My consulting contracts with several of those same clients made me the perfect fall guy. They're meeting with someone tonight, Sophie continued. Room 1247. I've planted audio devices, but you should know. They're expecting company. 2 men from Julian's finance department. That evening, I listened from the adjoining room as Clare and Julian hosted their co-conspirators. The conversation was everything I'd hoped for and worse than I'd imagined. Eric's security protocols are sophisticated, Clare was saying, but Julian has administrative access to override them. We transfer the funds during the Morrison Industries update, make it look like Eric created backdoor access for himself. What about the paper trail? Asked one of the finance guys. Eric's consulting invoices are inflated, Julian replied. We've been padding them for months. When the audit happens, it'll look like he was overcharging clients and skimming from their accounts. And if he fights it? The second man asked. He won't, Clare said coldly. I know him. He'll take a plea deal to avoid dragging me through a trial. He still thinks he's protecting me. The betrayal cut deeper than I'd expected. This wasn't just about money or even the affair. Clare genuinely believed I was weak enough to sacrifice myself for her. She was about to learn otherwise. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. They're moving to the restaurant. Kitchen staff is friendly. Want to get closer? 20 minutes later, I was crouched behind industrial refrigerators in the hotel's kitchen, listening as Clare and Julian celebrated their upcoming windfall over expensive wine. To stupid husbands, Julian toasted. To new beginnings, Clare replied, clinking her glass against his. I was so focused on recording their conversation that I almost missed the footsteps behind me. One of Julian's finance guys had spotted me through the kitchen's service window. Hey, what are you doing back here? I bolted, racing through the kitchen as shouts erupted behind me. The staff scattered as I vaulted over prep stations and dodged around industrial ovens. The service elevator was my salvation. I dove through the closing doors just as Julian's accomplices rounded the corner. Bonsoir, I said to the startled elevator operator. Going up? By morning, I was back in Portland with hours of recorded evidence. Clare and Julian returned 2 days later, confident their plan was foolproof. They had no idea their entire conspiracy was already in the hands of Julian's wife, Pinnacle's CEO, and Portland's most notorious gossip blogger. The explosion started with a single blog post. Marketing Executive's Montreal Getaway, Business or Pleasure. The accompanying photos showed Clare and Julian entering the hotel together, dining intimately, and returning to the same room. Within hours, Miranda Reed was calling lawyers, Mr. Huntley was demanding explanations, and Claire's phone was ringing nonstop. Eric, she said when she found me calmly eating breakfast in our kitchen. We need to talk. Do we? I thought you were too busy with your Montreal strategy sessions. Her face crumpled. You know. I know everything, Clare. The affair, the embezzlement, the plan to frame me, all of it. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think, and it's about to get much worse. Because Montreal was just the warm-up. The real show was about to begin. The emergency board meeting at Pinnacle Communications was scheduled for 9 a.m. sharp. I arrived early, sitting in the lobby with a briefcase full of evidence and a smile that made the receptionist nervous. Clare and Julian entered together, trying to project confidence, but their body language screamed guilt. Julian's usually perfect hair was disheveled, and Claire's makeup couldn't quite hide the stress lines around her eyes. Mr. Nash? Ms. Price, the HR director, approached with barely concealed curiosity. "I wasn't expecting you today." "I'm here to provide clarification on some recent allegations," I replied pleasantly. "Wouldn't want any misunderstandings about my consulting work." The boardroom was tense. Mr. Huntley sat at the head of the table, his face grim. Miranda Reed was there too, her lawyer beside her, looking like she wanted to commit murder. Julian tried to control the narrative from the start. "This is clearly a setup," he announced. "Eric Nash has been embezzling from our clients and using his wife to cover his tracks. When Clare discovered his crimes, he retaliated with these fabricated accusations." "Interesting theory," I said, opening my briefcase. "Except for the part where it's complete bullshit." I laid out the evidence methodically. Photographs, audio recordings, financial documents, and time-stamped security footage. Every aspect of their affair and embezzlement plot was documented in excruciating detail. "This recording is from their Montreal hotel room," I explained, playing Claire's voice through the boardroom speakers. "We transfer the funds during the Morrison Industries update. Make it look like Eric created backdoor access for himself?" Claire's face went white. Julian started to speak, but I cut him off. "There's more. Bank records showing Julian's corporate card payments for hotel rooms. Phone records of calls between Clare and Julian during supposed client meetings. And my personal favorite, security footage of them in my home while Clare was supposedly at a company retreat." The room was silent except for the sound of careers imploding. "This is illegal surveillance," Julian protested desperately. "Actually, it's not. Everything was obtained legally, my own property, public spaces, and information provided by concerned parties." I smiled at Miranda, who nodded grimly. "Your wife was very cooperative once she learned about your extracurricular activities." Mr. Huntley's voice was deadly quiet. "Julian, you're terminated immediately. Security will escort you out. Claire, you're suspended pending a full investigation." But I wasn't finished. As we left the building, Julian cornered me in the parking garage. "You think you've won?" he snarled. "I'll destroy you for this." "You already tried. How'd that work out?" He swung at me, a wild haymaker that I easily dodged. I grabbed his wrist and twisted, using his momentum to slam him face first into his precious Mustang. "Touch me again, and I'll have you arrested for assault," I said calmly. "Now, let me show you what real destruction looks like." I pulled out my phone and opened an app I'd designed for remote system access. Julian's car was newer than he liked to admit, modern enough to have wireless connectivity for its security system. "The thing about technology," I explained as Julian watched in horror, "is that everything's connected now." I activated the car's alarm system, then overrode its shut-off protocols. The horn blared continuously while the headlights flashed in a seizure-inducing pattern. Then I triggered the automatic sprinkler system I'd hacked in the parking garage's fire safety network. Water cascaded down on Julian's Mustang as the alarm shrieked and lights strobed. Other car owners ran to move their vehicles while Julian frantically tried to stop the chaos. "How do I make it stop?" he shouted over the noise. "You don't," I replied, walking away. "Insurance should cover most of it, assuming they believe it was an accident." By evening, the video had gone viral. "Portland executive's car has epic meltdown" was trending on social media, complete with Julian's panicked attempts to shut off his own alarm system. Claire was waiting in our condo when I got home, surrounded by packed suitcases. "I'm leaving," she announced. "Smart move. Your parents disowned you yet?" Her face crumpled. "How did you—" "Your mother called me this morning. Something about not wanting to be associated with a thief and an adulteress. Her words, not mine." Claire's carefully constructed world was collapsing. Her job was gone, her family had cut her off, and her social circle was treating her like a pariah. Even Tara and Gwen, her closest friends, had publicly distanced themselves once the scandal broke. "Eric, please. We can work this out." "No, we can't. But don't worry. I'm not done yet. This was just the opening act." Because while Julian was fired and humiliated, he wasn't broken, and I needed him completely destroyed before this was over. Julian's desperation made him dangerous, but it also made him stupid. After losing his job and his wife filing for divorce, he'd moved into a downtown apartment and hired Doug Brennan, a private investigator with more muscle than brains, to intimidate me. Doug was following me badly, parking across from my office in an obvious rental car, tailing me to the grocery store like some discount noir detective. I let him think he was invisible for 3 days before deciding to have some fun. Thursday evening, I led Doug on a tour of Portland's industrial district. My Honda was built for efficiency, not speed, but I knew these streets from years of service calls. Doug's rental car was powerful but clumsy in the narrow alleys between warehouses. I turned into a loading dock area behind a textile factory, killed my lights, and waited. Doug's headlights swept past my hiding spot as he searched frantically. That's when my friend Danny's construction drone descended from the darkness, its LED spotlight blinding Doug through his windshield. "What the hell?" Doug shouted, stumbling out of his car as the drone circled him like an angry mechanical wasp. I emerged from the shadows, phone in hand, recording everything. Doug Brennan, right? Julian Reed hired you to harass me. How's that working out?" "I'm not harassing anyone," he protested, shielding his eyes from the drone's light. "This is a public street." "Actually, it's private property. You're trespassing, but I'm willing to discuss this reasonably." What followed was less an interrogation than a business negotiation. Doug was a small-time operator who couldn't afford to lose his license over Julian's revenge fantasies. When I showed him the evidence of Julian's crimes, he realized he'd been hired by a desperate man with no money to pay him. "He owes me $3,000 already," Doug admitted. "Keeps promising payment after he settles some accounts." "Those accounts are frozen by court order," I explained. "Julian's broke, Doug. Cut your losses." 20 minutes later, Doug was singing like a canary, confessing Julian's entire plan to discredit me through harassment and manufactured evidence. I recorded every word. Julian's mansion in the West Hills was his last symbol of success. Even with his assets frozen, he was fighting to keep the house through legal maneuvering. That's where I found him Friday night, drunk and raging at his empty swimming pool. "Eric," he slurred when he saw me approaching across his manicured lawn. "Come to gloat?" "Come to end this," I replied. "You hired Doug to threaten me? Bad move?" "Prove it." I played the recording of Doug's confession on my phone's speaker. Julian's face went through several stages of fury before settling on defeated rage. "You've destroyed everything," he said quietly. "My marriage, my career, my reputation. You did that yourself. I just documented it. What do you want? Your Mustang." He laughed bitterly. "It's totaled, remember? Your little stunt with the sprinklers? Not that one. The real one. The 1967 Shelby GT500 you keep in your garage. The one you bought with embezzled money." Julian's face went white. "How did you—" "I know everything, Julian, including the fact that you used Pinnacle's funds to buy your dream car. That makes it evidence in a federal crime." I pulled out my phone and opened another custom app. Modern cars weren't the only things with wireless connectivity. Julian's garage door opener, security system, and even his classic car's aftermarket alarm system were all connected to his home network. "The beauty of restoration projects," I explained as Julian watched in horror, "is that everyone adds modern conveniences. Remote start, GPS tracking, smartphone integration, very convenient." I triggered the Mustang's remote start system, then overrode its safety protocols. The engine roared to life in the closed garage, but instead of shutting off after the normal warm-up period, it kept running. "What are you doing?" Julian shouted, running toward his house. "Teaching you about consequences." The garage's automatic sprinkler system activated next, followed by the fire suppression foam. Julian's pristine 1967 Shelby GT500 was drowning in its own garage while its engine screamed at redline. "Stop it, please." "Can't. System malfunction. Happens all the time with these smart home setups." By the time the fire department arrived, Julian's dream car was destroyed. The insurance company would investigate, find evidence of the embezzlement that paid for it, and Julian would face federal charges. As I walked back to my Honda, Julian collapsed on his lawn, watching his last treasure die in a cloud of foam and smoke. "Enjoy the fame," I called back to him. You built your empire on lies. Now watch it shatter." But Claire wasn't finished. As I drove home, my phone buzzed with a text from my lawyer. "Emergency. Claire filed assault charges. Claims you've been abusing her, has video evidence." My wife's final gambit was about to backfire spectacularly. The Old Foundry looked different in the storm, darker, more ominous than during our engagement party 8 months ago. Rain lashed the industrial windows as I waited in the same spot where I'd first humiliated Claire with the prenup surprise. Tonight would be our final performance. "Eric?" Claire's voice echoed in the empty event space as she entered through the main door, Julian behind her. "What's this about?" "Reconciliation," I said simply. "One last chance to work things out before the lawyers take over." They approached cautiously. Claire looked haggard. Her designer clothes couldn't hide the stress of unemployment and social exile. Julian was worse, unshaven and hollow-eyed since losing his car and facing federal charges. "I know you're angry," Claire began, "but filing false charges—" "About those charges," I interrupted, pulling out my tablet. "Want to see the evidence you submitted?" The video played on the screen, Claire cowering in our bedroom as an off-camera voice shouted threats. She'd filmed herself being abused by someone the camera never showed, creating evidence of domestic violence that didn't exist? Powerful stuff, I admitted. Really sells the victimization, except for one problem. I swiped to the next video, security footage from our condo's bedroom camera, showing Claire staging the entire scene. She'd recorded herself cringing and crying, then added threatening audio in post-production. My security system captures everything, Claire, including you faking evidence to frame me for abuse. Her face went ashen. Julian stepped protectively in front of her, but his bravado was gone. This ends now, he said weakly. We'll drop the charges, disappear, leave you alone. Too late for that. The main doors opened, and our audience began arriving. Miranda Reed entered first, flanked by her divorce lawyer. Mr. Huntley followed with Pinnacle's legal team. Then came Tara and Gwen, Claire's former friends, drawn by curiosity and the promise of scandal. "What is this?" Claire demanded, panic creeping into her voice. "This is your audience," I replied. "The people whose opinions you cared about so much. They deserve to know the truth." Local reporter Dave Martinez entered with his camera crew, followed by Detective Sergeant Halloran from Portland PD. The final guests were my sister Liz and my friend Danny, there to witness justice. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced as the crowd gathered in the Foundry's main space, "welcome to the final act." I activated the building's old PA system, another perk of knowing how to hack integrated networks. My voice echoed through the space as rain hammered the windows. 8 months ago, in this very room, Claire tried to trap me with a prenup designed to steal my business. Tonight you'll learn how far she was willing to go to destroy me. The presentation was methodical and devastating. I played the Montreal recordings, showed the embezzlement evidence, and displayed Claire and Julian's plan to frame me for their crimes. The audience watched in fascination as two people they'd once respected revealed themselves as criminals and liars. "But wait," I continued, "there's more." The fake abuse video played next, followed immediately by the security footage showing Claire staging the entire thing. The gasps from the audience were audible over the storm. "My wife didn't just betray our marriage," I explained. "She tried to destroy an innocent man's life to cover her crimes. She weaponized abuse allegations, spitting in the face of every real victim of domestic violence." Claire was crying now, but not the fake tears from her staged video. These were real, born of shame and the complete destruction of her reputation. Julian tried to run. He made it 3 steps before Detective Halloran blocked his path. "Julian Reed, you're under arrest for embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy," the detective announced, producing handcuffs. "Clare Nash, you're under arrest for filing false police reports and conspiracy to commit fraud." As the handcuffs clicked into place, I addressed the crowd one final time. Some people think marriage is about compromise, about overlooking your partner's flaws. But when someone tries to destroy you, your business, your freedom, your reputation, there's only one appropriate response. I gestured to Claire and Julian, now in custody, their lives in ruins. Total annihilation. The crowd erupted in conversation as police led my wife and her lover away. Miranda Reed approached me, her expression mixing admiration with wariness. "Remind me never to cross you," she said. "Just don't try to steal from me or frame me for crimes I didn't commit," I replied. "I'm actually pretty reasonable otherwise." As the crowd dispersed and the storm continued to rage, I stood alone in the Old Foundry where this all began. My phone buzzed with a text from the impound lot. 1967, Shelby GT 500 available for auction. Interested? I smiled, typing back, "Very interested." Outside, Liz waited by her car, shaking her head in amazement. "That was..." She paused, searching for words. "Justice," I finished. I was going to say terrifying. "Remind me to stay on your good side." "Your family, Liz. You're safe." As we walked through the rain toward our cars, she asked, "What happens now?" I thought about Claire and Julian facing federal charges, their reputations destroyed, their futures ruined. I thought about my business, stronger than ever after the publicity. I thought about the classic Mustang I'd soon own, bought with the insurance payout from Julian's accident. "Now," I said, unlocking my Honda. "Now I go home to my empty condo, order pizza, and enjoy the peace and quiet. Turns out revenge is a dish best served with complete social destruction and federal prison sentences." "And the Mustang?" I grinned. "Guess who's keeping the Mustang?"